time to gain some experience.
Well, look at the fact that he only came into the Indy Lights program a couple years ago. He didn't do USF2000, didn't do Indy Pro 2000. He jumped right in with Juncos Racing back in 2016, and then, of course, moved to Carlin Racing, did a little bit of the IndyCar last year. He's only got 3 years of Formula Car experience coming out of karting and maybe some testing in Formula Renault. He's still a young 20-year-old driver, really focused on his fitness right now, picked up boxing to try to get a little more agility. He's definitely a championship challenger this year.
Zachary Clayman made 9 NTT IndyCar Series starts last year to go along with his debut in the 2017 finale at Sonoma. His best finish was 12th last year in the IndyCar Grand Prix at Indianapolis. The 500, he qualified 13th, had a really strong qualifying effort. He led 7 laps, finished 1 lap down in 19th for Dale Coyne Racing. Had a good run going at Texas Motor Speedway last year as well. Kind of looked like he may score that first top 10 finish before he was caught up in an accident with Will Power. And the thing is, he joins a team that certainly knows how to get it done in Bilardi Auto Racing. That I mean, they've got a championship a handful of years ago with Gabby Chavez. We know the type of effort that they put into those race cars. And Clayman, I think, is going to be a guy that you kind of have to label as one of the favorites in this championship, simply from an experience standpoint.
I totally agree. There's a lot of natural talent with Clayman. But then you look at Bilardi's program. They've got the same engineers in place, and they've always been good here. Look at the wins they've had in years past. Felix Rosenquist, Zach Veach won here, Gabby Chavez as well. You even look last year. If it had not been for the qualifying issue for Aaron Telitz, he was the fastest outright driver here in the opening qualifying session in practice. It put him behind the 8 ball. The team had to get the car from Carlin to get Aaron Telitz back on track. But St. Petersburg has historically been a really good place for Bilardi Auto Racing.
We're excited. We're going to have Aaron Telitz join us at some point this weekend, I believe, for the race number 1 tomorrow on Saturday, and really excited to get his insights. A young man with a lot of experience. We hope to see him get an opportunity once again, either in Indy Lights or make the jump up from IndyCar. He ran with the Vassar-Sullivan group at the Rolex 24, so I know that Jimmy Vassar and those guys pretty high on Aaron Telitz.
I think he's here to spend some time with Sebastian Bourdais and the team. I think he potentially could step into an understudy role. They really like what he was able to do at the 24. He's going to run more races with them as well in the sports car team. Yeah, Aaron Telitz, big guy, I would love to see in the NTT IndyCar program. And if indeed he has stepped into a place that could potentially put him there, it's going to be great to get his input here this weekend.
7.5 minutes into this practice session, it is Ryan Norman, the veteran, back for a 3rd year in the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires, who has gone P1. Oliver Askew is 2nd. Robert McGinnis 3rd. Zachary Clayman 4th. Renus VK is 5th. Let's touch on Ryan Norman, who just set another fast lap, Rob, at 1:09.945. You talk about guys that we expect to be championship contenders. This seems to be that 3rd year for Ryan Norman. This may be where he finds that sweet spot, driving once again for Andretti Autosport.
Well, another driver who didn't do the first 2 rungs of the road to Indy. He jumped straight into the Indy Lights program 3 years ago, running with Andretti Autosport, staying with the same team that he has been with the entire time. So there's that baseline, that comfort level that he has. And, Nick, you've watched him kind of get better and better. The first year was learning the car, learning the track, learning the team. Last year, by the end of the season, he had a great battle with Colton Herta, scored a victory at Gateway, and then was really strong at Portland as well. The momentum has been moving in the right direction. He was thinking about looking at IndyCar this year, putting together a sponsorship package, but instead comes back and says, I want to win this. I want to go win a championship with that on the resume. He has to be a challenger for the championship this year.
Well, it's a beautiful morning here in St. Petersburg. Let's check in on pit lane with Jake Query covering this first practice session for Indy Lights. All right, so still ironing out some details with our guys down on pit lane with the RF gear. Apologize for that. Yeah, it's Ryan Norman at P1. Another guy, just 20 years old. He turns 21 a little bit later. In fact, in about a week on March 19th. He's from Aurora, Ohio. He considers this kind of a home race for him, not only being from Ohio because of the race up in mid-Ohio, but he spent some time living here in Tampa. So this is a big weekend for Ryan Norman. And now we see one of our newcomers pop to P1. Rob, a guy that I know you're really high on, Oliver Askew.
This was interesting for me because you remember when they had the spring training test, or rather the test at COTA at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Nobody knew that Oliver Askew was even going to show up in an Andretti car. He shows up, he comes out to the test, he's super fast, and then announces the next day that it's a full-time deal. Here's a guy that is on the fast track, almost like a Spencer Pigot kind of thing. Came into USF2000 2 years ago, won the championship, gets a scholarship to move to the what was then Pro Mazda, is now, of course, the Indy Pro 2000 series. Good running last year, didn't have quite the car to win the championship, but he's been able to put together some sponsorship, some backing to be able to put it together. Oliver Askew, even though he's so new and young coming into the program, there's so much talent there. The Rising Star folks were obviously high on him as well, and he's going to be one of the guys that's going to challenge Ryan Norman within that Andretti Autosport operation.
That 2017 USF Championship season, 7 poles, 7 race wins, 11 podiums. That was one of the most impressive campaigns I think we've seen in a long time.
And the funny thing is, I think it took him off guard because he knew coming in that he didn't really have a lot of track time, a lot of seat time in the car. But with Cape Motorsports, they're kind of the juggernaut of USF 2000. You know that if you can blend with the team philosophy and you get a good feel for the car, that you're going to have a good season. Oliver came into the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg with a mindset, all he needs is a couple of top fives. He was able to score wins. And when you do that, the momentum changes. You go to the next race, and you're ready to go. And here's a kid that was a top-level go-kart racer as well. He was national #1 for a time. All the skills there, and when he got into a car, he just let everything kind of happen.
The sponsorship on that car is Index Invest. It's a Swedish independent investment group. His mother is Swedish, Oliver Askew. He's from right here nearby in Jupiter, Florida, about 3 hours from St. Petersburg. So this is kind of a home race weekend for him, for Oliver Askew. Be interesting to see if he can kick off the season with a race win. And he's driving for that defending championship team, and we're already seeing early on in this practice session, Rob, those Andretti Autosport drivers pretty fast. Ryan Norman, P1, Oliver Askew, P2, and Robert McGinnis, a really talented young man, young driver, driving the number 27 car for Andretti Autosport, right there, third quick at a minute 8.8.
Yeah, Robert McGinnis, a couple years in the USF2000 program, ran with Uncos Racing last year in Indy Pro 2000. 1 win to his credit. He actually won here in St. Petersburg in his second year in USF 2000. You go a little further down, though. Look at Toby Sauer. We haven't talked about Toby yet. Very interesting addition, and a late addition to the paddock as well. He's with BN Racing, but it's kind of like a combo deal with Team Pelfrey. It's actually the Team Pelfrey car that Toby Sauer is running here this weekend. It's underneath the BN Racing tent. Toby ran with BN last year at Road America when both he and David Malukas were so good. They finished first and second in both of the Indy Pro 2000 races at Road America. He's got a lot of talent. Toby does, a driver from England, ran British F3 last year. The talent is there. I'm not sure if the budget's there, if we're going to see him at any other races this year, but he puts a thing on the podium, and you may see him back when we go to our next race at COTA.
Yeah, fantastic to see a new team make the jump up to Indy Lights. You've got the familiar teams that we've seen over the last handful of years, the Andretti Autosports of the world, the defending champions of this series. Of course, Bilardi Auto Racing is back, and then certainly you've got the guys from who am I forgetting? Juncos, which, of course, they've won a couple championships over the year with Spencer Pigot and a couple years ago with Kyle Kaiser. But to see BN Racing make the step up, that's a team, Rob, that's fielded cars all through the road to Indy. For them to make the jump up to Indy Lights, boy, that's exactly what we want to see. Some new blood on the ownership side. We've seen it in IndyCar the last couple years, too. To see these car owners want to make the jump up, too, just like the drivers, boy, I think it's a really positive sign.
And I think it's going to keep coming. We saw Carlin Racing was back in for a time with Dalton Kellogg, then Logan Sargent tested for them as well. Logan instead going back over to Europe to run British F3 with the team, with Carlin. I expect to see them back with a two-car effort next year. And there are other new teams that are looking at it. There's a couple of teams in the Indy Pro 2000 and USF 2000 paddocks who are looking at potentially getting cars to move forward as well. There's a lot of positive momentum right now. 10 cars to start, much better than we had last year. We may see as many as 14 at the Freedom 100.
Ryan Norman is P1 here in this first practice session of the season from St. Petersburg, Florida. Oliver Askew is second. The impressive run for Toby Sauer continues as he has jumped to third. Zachary Clayman now takes over the top spot at a minute 7.92, bumping Norman to second, Askew to third, Sauer to fourth. Renus VK is fifth. Robert McGinnis sixth quick. Julian Falchero is seventh fastest. David Malukas is eighth. Dalton Kellett, the veteran, is 9th, and Lucas Cole is 10th. Rob, let's talk a little bit about this championship. 18 races this season across the various different racetracks. You've got street circuits, road courses, large ovals, of course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, some of the tight bull rings, the small racetracks as well. Gateway is going to be fun at the end of the season. We saw a great race there last year. This is really a great championship, and as year after year, it has really prepared these drivers to race in the IndyCar Series.
And I think the primary highlights we should bring up obviously today is the fact that we go from 3 ovals down to 2. We're not going back to Iowa this year, so it's the Freedom 100, and of course the event at Gateway, but 2 big additions as well. There were so many opportunities this year that Dan Anderson and the crew sat down and said, what do we do? A chance to go to the Circuit of the Americas in Austin? Yeah, let's check that one off. And then, of course, now the entire road to Indy joining the NTT IndyCar Series for their finale at WeatherTech Laguna Seca as well. So I think for me, the addition of those 2 fantastic tracks, going back to Monterey and going down to Austin, you know, we'll drop Iowa right now. Hopefully we'll go back again one time. I love the race at Iowa, but there's a couple, and again, a good, as you said, cross-section of oval, street circuit, and purpose-built natural terrain courses.
A slight off for Lucas Cole, the 20-year-old Brazilian, down in turn number 8, driving for Bilardi Auto Racing. As he gets off the racetrack and gets back on. Young man that from Miami, big NBA fan, young guy, really passionate about racing. We see him giving up the inside line through the final couple corners to David Malukas as they head back onto the front straightaway. But Lucas Cole, young guy, raw talent, that's for sure, Rob. And it's going to be tough to compete against some of these drivers that have the experience and have shown the pace. But good to see another young face, a young Brazilian. The Brazilian legacy in American open wheel racing can't be understated. Good to see him here in the Indy Lights Series as well.
They have a really focused program for Lucas Cole here this year. He's working with Roberto Moreno, and it's about trying to put something together, some sponsorship together in Brazil. He did 3 years in the USF2000 Series, ran with Pabst Racing last year, and was a regular top 5 finisher, got a couple of podiums as well. So the natural talent is there for sure. But this is a 2-year concept. They're coming in. They know that the Indy Lights program gets a lot more coverage down in Brazil. Let's bring Lucas in with Bilardi Auto Racing. He can learn the car, learn the tracks, learn the team. And while he does that, they're going to be able to put together the sponsorship they need to potentially go after a championship in 2020.
Lucas Cole, a multiple-time Brazilian regional state karting champion. He spent the last 3 seasons competing in USF2000, the previous 2 with Pabst Racing. He's kind of shown some steady improvement, 12th in points in 2016, 7th in points in 2017, and then a year ago finished 3rd in the USF2000 points with 4 podium finishes, 7 top 5s, 10 top 10s. Never found his way to victory lane, Rob, but certainly was a guy by the end of last year knocking on the door for that first race win.
Well, the funny thing is you look at those last 2 years, as Lucas, you said, look at the consistency of him improving and improving. Well, these last 2 years he had to go head-to-head with Oliver Askew.
Yeah.
And then Kyle Kirkwood, who resets the record, single-season record for wins. So it was hard to get that first win going against those 2 really solid drivers with Cape Motorsports. What you said was straight up. That's Lucas Cole. He's getting better and better and more consistent. He's not making the mistakes he made in his opening year. And if he stays out of trouble and makes no mistakes this year, just learns the car, you're going to see him work his way into the top 5 as well.
And again, another one of these kids, and I call him kids, he's just 20 years old. I look up and down the roster, 18 years old, 18 years old. That's Renus VK and Robert McGinnis, 20-year-olds, and Lucas Cole and Zachary Clayman. David Malukas, just 17 years old. Oliver Askew, 22. Ryan Norman's only a 20-year-old. Dalton Kellett's the old man of the bunch at 25. Toby Sowery is 22 years old. This is a series full of young drivers, and as we talked about, they need to be given that time to develop, and in Lucas Cole's case, a 2-year plan at the very least. Great way to approach it.
Yeah, potentially 3 years. You're right. As long as he can, the idea is to get that sponsorship, that backing from the crew in Brazil, get that industry behind him, and again, just give him the time to learn. And he's with a great team to do that, right? He's with Brian Bilardi's crew. They've got a great engineering staff. They got some coaching personnel there as well. I think Lucas is going to have a good season. He's not going to show the speed right now, and I don't care about that. When you're young, and I've said this before, at St. Petersburg, you are prepping for Toronto. You're prepping for the next race. This is you getting experience on a street circuit in this particular race car, because there is almost 3 times the amount of horsepower from a USF 2000 car.
Zachary Clayman jumps to P1 here in the practice session for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. Certainly been very quick. We saw Dalton Kellett making his way around turn number 10. Dalton Kellett now in his 4th year in Indy Lights, and perhaps more impressive, Rob, his 8th season in the Road to Indy. He's one of those guys who is a true product of the Road to Indy system, and not only into his 4th season, but now with a new team driving for Juncos Racing as he jumps over there with that team to be teammates with Renus VK. Dalton Kellett, the goal's got to be find a way to get to victory lane and get that first win in Indy Lights.
Well, Dalton Kellett, you know, one of the places he's really highlighted his skills is on the ovals. He's been real strong on the ovals. There's some other tracks where he gets kind of more comfortable. Again, Kellett will be running alongside Renus VK, as you said, at Juncos Racing. We'll get into Renus VK as well, too, because there's a guy, there's a story. He's a future star. A lot to talk about with Renus VK.
All right, let's check in with our pit reporters here in St. Petersburg. First, let's start with Jake Query. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, Nick. It's great to be here in St. Petersburg. And these first sessions are always interesting. You guys have talked a lot about it, but the mix here in Indy Lights between those names with which we're familiar in this series and those that are still trying to find their way through. Now, the conditions could not be any better for them this morning, and what I hate to say is a relaxed session. I'm sure those that are on pit road and in the cockpit would disagree with me, but at first the session just involved kind of familiarizing yourself with the track. As Rob had talked about, trying to get some of that Cooper tire rubber laid down and just getting the exact feel for the car itself. But the conditions could not be any better. The 63-degree temperature here feels warmer than that because there is absolutely zero obstruction of that sun. There's a very slight breeze. And Nick, one would have to anticipate that over the course of this morning itself, that track temperature, of course, will go up. Naturally, the temperature will go up. We're expected to be into the low to mid 70s in terms of what we should see this afternoon. And then you get that mix of rubber, so it creates different scenarios for these cars, different grips for these cars. But right now, I think everybody just...
So might have lost Jake there at the tail end of that report, but good to have him back with IndyCar Radio. Jake, of course, will be anchoring the television coverage on NBC Gold, and then certainly will be with us all season with coverage of the NTT IndyCar Series. Let's check in, or at least we'll try to check in with Ryan Marine down there on pit lane. Ryan?
Hey, Nick, hope you got me this time. Great to chat with you guys, and certainly happy to be back here on the streets of St. Petersburg. Picture-perfect weather, as Jake detailed a few moments ago, and just a perfect place to kick off the season. We were talking about the Cooper tires for these drivers, and tire strategy throughout the weekend is really pivotal for these teams. They're allotted 4 new sets of Cooper tires for the weekend. They're also allowed to carry over 1 set of used tires from the Homestead test that they had within the last week or so. So some interesting developments from that perspective. Just the way that the teams have to go about trying to allot these tires, make sure they have the rubber that they need for qualifying and, of course, for the race. And you mentioned a few minutes ago, Zachary Clayman, rather, jumping to the top of the time charts, and he immediately came into the pit lane. The Bilardi Auto Racing crew working on that race car, making a bunch of adjustments. So obviously very quick in the early going, but they're not satisfied. The work continues here on the number 13 car.
He was P1. Thank you, Ryan. Great to have you back this season. We're going to have Ryan out in turn 10 later this weekend to call the action for Indy Lights as well as IndyCar qualifying. He talked about Zachary Clayman, who's been P1 for, I would say, a majority of this session. But, Rob, we've got a brand-new name at the top of the charts with that brand-new Indy Lights entry, BN Racing.
It's interesting. It's almost like this team just wants to step up to surprise us, right?
Sure, right?
BN Racing, they were going to come with one car, for David Malukas, a young driver who has gone through USF2000 last year, an Indy Pro, double winner at Road America. He's got a lot of talent. I followed his career through junior kart racing. He's won internationally in karting as well. There's a ton of national talent for David Malukas, the driver of the number 79 out of Chicago, Illinois. This team ready to step it up, but he looks good here. Puts down a 107.065, almost 0.3 quicker than Zachary Clayman. What I like is in the top 5 right now, we've got 3 different racing teams. We've got BN Racing. We've got Julian Falchero, who we're going to talk more about as well for Bilardi Auto Racing. He goes to P2. He jumps ahead of his teammate Zachary Clayman. Then the 2 Andretti drivers, Oliver Askew and Ryan Norman, 4th and 5th. Malukas is another driver that if he starts to get comfortable, again, he can be in this championship chase. There really is a half a dozen guys that could probably be in a title run here this year.
Yeah, David Malukas, just 17 years old. His 3rd year in the Road to Indy in 2017, had a partial season in USF2000, finished 2nd at Road America and a 5th place at Watkins Glen, and that was good enough to impress the folks at BN Racing. 2018, he moves into a full season in Pro Mazda. 4th in the championship a year ago with 3 wins, 6 podiums, 8 top 5s, and at 17 years old, Rob, that's just a guy as a car owner you want to get your hands on because you just know that there's a lot of raw talent there. To be that impressive at the Indy Pro 2000 level, we're calling it now, of course. I got to get that. That's $5 in the swear jar. But for him to show that much talent, 3 race wins, excuse me, as a 17-year-old is just incredible.
Every year, I've wanted him to come back to the series that he was in. He ran, you said a smaller series in USF2000. I was hoping he was going to come back and run for the championship. No, we're going to go right to Indy Pro 2000. Great, 3 wins. You're going to win the championship next year. No, we're going to pick up a Dallara IL-15. We're going Indy Lights racing next year. And he just moved up. And again, 17 years of age, he could easily be on one of these long-term deals here in Indy Lights, spend 4 years, like pull the Kyle Kaiser and really get yourself settled in, and then find himself an IndyCar down the line. But this kid's got a ton of talent. There's no doubt about this. But look at this right now, Nick. Julian Falchero goes to P1 for Belardi Auto Racing. There's a lot of great story there. A guy who tested with Andretti Autosport, ends up moving over to Belardi right before the start of the season. There's just a lot of great storylines in the Indy Lights paddock here to start the season. Yeah,
Julian Falchero, the Frenchman, 22 years old. He spent the last 2 seasons in GP3 for Campos Racing and Arden International. Kind of had a disappointing 2018, and this kind of a reset year for Julian Falchero to kind of change up the course of his career, moves over to Indy Lights, and already, Rob, showing that he's got the pace to compete at this level.
And I think it'll be a driver like Falchero from the GP3 program that starts to kind of turn the heads of some of the guys in Europe who are saying, hey, my focus is on Formula One, but as I look, it's super hard to find one of those seats. Or do I have the multiple millions of dollars to be able to buy a seat in F1 where, man, if I have the skills and I can redirect myself over to the road to Indy and potentially the NTT IndyCar Series, maybe that's what's going to work for me. And Falchero's got a lot of talent. I know Brian Belardi was very, very happy to get him on the team here for 2019.
You're listening to the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. My name's Nick Yeoman. Rob Howden joins me here in the booth. We are in St. Petersburg, Florida, for the first race weekend of the season for the NTT IndyCar Series. And this series, the Indy Lights Series, presented by Cooper Tires, as we are working our way past the midpoint of practice number 1. Let's talk a little bit about those Belardi Auto Racing drivers. We'll hear from the man himself as Jake Query is caught up with Brian Belardi.
It's always good to see Brian Belardi, who's got a smile on his face. Little pep in the step this morning. That's because you got out of the cold from back home up north and came down here. You told me it's 63 degrees, but you're already sweating. You guys are hard at work already, but a promising year for you. Tell me about your team that you've assembled for this year in the Indy Lights.
Well, there's a late addition, obviously, with Julian. We're just trying to get him acclimated right now to the track. He's obviously performing out, doing a great job. He's a very talented driver. As Eric claimed, DeMello's doing well. With Lucas, our goal with him is to get him on the podium by the end of the year, and he understands that, and it's going to be a team effort. So we're looking forward to this year.
With each new year, Brian, you've had a lot of great talent that's come through. You've built some of that talent yourself. But what are the challenges just in acclimating driver to team? And how many races into the year do you really pinpoint where, okay, this is the number of weekends where we should be completely solid and working together?
Well, it starts this weekend, actually. The pressure's on the team. So we just have to work through it. We have a great group of guys here, as always. The team's always with us, so it's just more of the drivers getting to know the engineers and the staff.
You've been around this for a while now. You obviously have won a championship with Belardi Auto Racing, but what is it that most gets your blood pumping here as we get set for the season? Is there one particular aspect of ownership in the Indy Lights that truly allows it to kind of stand out for you?
Well, it's the competition. I mean, I can never get away from that, the adrenaline. So, and trying to watch these drivers get to the next level, which obviously is IndyCar. So that's always exciting. We have a couple drivers in IndyCar right now that are performing quite well. So
you got to feel some pride with that, right? I mean, maybe a little bit of coach in you, but also a little bit of a father-like figure in you, where you find some pride when those guys would graduate up, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the end game for us. I mean, we are AAA baseball. So, I mean, to get them to the next level is where we want them to be.
63 degrees here, but you said you're sweating a little bit. That's because that competitive nature is already flowing. Brian Bellardi, look forward to talking to you over the course of the year.
Thank you.
One of the real good guys down here, Nick. Brian Bellardi with Bellardi Auto Racing.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Rob. His commitment to this series over the years has just been fantastic. And now with 3 cars, I mean, that's just fantastic to see Brian's organization strong and certainly with some pretty good shoes behind those cars. And Falchero, who's shown some speed. We saw Zachary Clayman, who's second, and then certainly the project of that team with Lucas Cole.
Well, and Brian mentioned some drivers there now in the IndyCar program that have come through his team. When you look at that with pride, he helped Zach Veach. He had Felix Rosenquist run. Gabby Chavez ran with him. Bellardi Auto Racing has a couple of wins in the Freedom 100 as well, and if you're an Indy Lights team owner, that's kind of the one you want to win. He's got a couple of victories there with Peter Dempsey, with Chavez as well. I think for Brian, here's a guy that played football, collegiate football. There's that competitive streak in him where he always wants to battle head-to-head, and there's a fierce rivalry between the Andretti camp and the Juncos camp, and when the Carlin crew was here, and now with the BN crew, there is that rivalry. There's that team aspect still that I think Brian still loves to have, coursing through the veins.
You mentioned the graduates. 25 of the 33 starters in the Indy 500 last year, a staggering 75% were Indy Lights graduates, including the last 5 champions, Sage Karam, Gabby Chavez, Spencer Piggott, Ed Jones, Kyle Kaiser. And really cool news that broke yesterday, Rob, that our Indy Lights champion from a year ago, Patricio Award, has signed a deal with Carlin Racing. He'll be have a chance to compete in the Indianapolis 500. Certainly, we're expecting 36, 37, 38 cars, so there is no lock to get in the field. But to have Pato Award in a ride with Carlin Racing, who, from what I've heard, I think that team made some adjustments during the offseason with how they gathered their data, how they prepped those cars, a lot more attention on the dampers. I think that team could be a surprise team, especially with a young man like Pato Award, who's going to compete. I think it's 12 races this year, including the Indianapolis 500.
Well, and Pato also brings that energy that he has into the team. You've got a couple interesting couple of drivers, and Max Chilton and Charlie Kimball, and of course the entire philosophy that Trevor Carlin brings to the program.
Indy Lights graduates that spent some time, by the way.
Well, you had said 25 drivers in the Indy 500. Who are we potentially going to add this year? Pato Award, Colton Herta, Felix Rosenquist. Are we going to see 30 or, could we get to 28? Could we get to 30? It's just showing what this Indy Lights program does. It develops drivers and gets them to the IndyCar program. You looked at the last number of champions, or even some of the guys that didn't get the championship but didn't quit. A guy like Jack Harvey, who was second a couple of times and got in there and kept fighting and was able to put a program together with Mike Shank.
We just heard that the 5-car of Lucas Cole will have to serve a black flag here during this practice session. But, again, to put a bow on that Pato Award story, just really happy for him. Obviously, the situation with Harding Racing during the offseason was a little messy, and it would have been a shame to have the Indy Lights champion on the sideline. Wish he was certainly in a car this weekend to kick off the season. But Charlie Kimball and Max Chilton will pilot those Carlin Racing machines, and we're going to see Pato for the first time down in Austin, Texas. You excited to get down there to Circuit of the Americas? I've never been, and everyone I've talked to said, Nick, you're going to love this place. It's incredible facilities. The people are great. I'm really excited for that race weekend.
We were there a bunch of years ago with the Indy Pro 2000 series, and you're right. I'm thrilled to get to Austin. I think it's going to be incredible, and I think that the cool thing about having Pato getting that program is that we're going to be able to feel good about it again, that we see our Indy Lights driver out there. And the cool thing is, Pato Award's already got a victory here this weekend. He won the Kart for Kids charity Pro-Am race with a bunch of karters on Wednesday evening. So the kid still he's right there, wants to be part of the action.
That does not surprise me, as competitive as he is. So let's check in with another new competitor to the Indy Lights series. It's a new car owner for BN Racing, standing by with Ryan Marine.
Yeah, that's right, Nick. We've been talking about our new team in Indy Lights. That is BN Racing. The B and the N from BN Racing is Bryn Neutral, who is joining me now on pit lane. Chicago-based team, just a couple of years on the road to Indy, and now you're represented on all 3 rungs. How excited are you now to have an operation here in Indy Lights?
Yeah, it's been a crazy journey. You said 2 years. It's actually been, 18 months, I think. So not even 2 years. Pretty crazy is what I could say. I don't know if I have any other words other than that, really.
How have you been able to do it, to build this so quickly and to have a presence now at all 3 levels of the road to Indy?
Yeah, it's been very tough. You know, a lot of hard work's gone into it. Still hard work going on this very second. You know, I'm on pit lane right now, doing interviews. So yeah, I can't say any more than just a lot of hard work.
Yeah, doing a little bit of everything. You were working on David's car a few moments ago. Talk about this young driver that you've been able to bring along, and now to have him representing your team at the Indy Lights level.
Yeah, he's been with me for 4 years now, so we've got a very good relationship together. He's been with me sort of every step, certainly in the road to Indy. So it's nice to move up with him and have the consistency with the driver and who, you know, two-way working relationship. So yeah, no, it's very, very important. Certainly, you know, moving to this level, you know, it's to do it with a completely new driver would be very difficult, I think.
And a 2-car team this weekend in partnership with Dale Pelfrey and Pelfrey Racing, Toby Sowery behind the wheel there. How did that come together, and could we see that car on the grid beyond here at St. Pete?
You know, we could see it more. It just depends on circumstances. So, you know, we'll just see how it goes right now. It's just a one-race deal. And, you know, Toby came to us because he drove for us last year when we did a 1-2 in Road America last year. Toby was the other guy on the podium with David, so that's how it came.
Last thing for you, and we'll let you get back to work. What is your background? I understand you did some driving, but how did you transition into the team ownership?
Yeah, well, I raced as a kid in karts many years ago, and I've worked in all sorts of steps in motorsport, from being a mechanic to an engineer to an engine builder to driver coach, manager, and I've just sort of, you know, put all my skills together, and here I am.
It's great to have you guys in the series. Welcome to Indy Lights.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo those sentiments. Welcome to Bryn Newtall and that BN Racing team to Indy Lights. And the cool thing, Rob, is we're watching this practice session, you always kind of worry about first-year teams in their debut weekend. They're not embarrassing themselves at all, with Malukas and Sowery 6th and 7th on the speed charts, just about a second off the fast lap that's been set by Zachary Clayman. They've shown some pace immediately here in St. Petersburg.
Add in the fact that not only are they a rookie team, but they've got 2 rookie drivers. It's not like they rolled in here and, you know, got a driver who's been in the program for a year or 2. Everything's brand new, and I think as long as they try to focus on developing that baseline, they're gonna be in good shape. P6, P7 for the 2 drivers, David Malukas and Toby Sowery, separated by about 7/10 of a second. That's going to be a solid baseline to start with moving forward.
You could, of course, call the races for Pro Mazda, or excuse me, USF2000
$5
and Indy Pro 2000. Boy, my pocket's going to get light here very quickly. What do you remember from that Road America weekend where Malukas and Sowery went 1-2?
Well, the interesting thing is you go back even one more year, and David Malukas actually put this USF2000 car on the pole because he had Victor Franzoni working with him a little bit. Victor's kind of been coaching David a little bit here and there. Victor drove their USF2000 car to help with the setup a little bit. Last year, I think that was the coming out party for David Malukas. He was very strong earlier in the year. He was quick. He had the speed on the road course at Indianapolis. He even was strong as we rolled into the other events. But when we got there at the end of June, that was his opportunity. And we see so many young drivers start by Road America, Toronto and Mid-Ohio. That's when they really start coming in, because the first couple of races, whether it's St. Petersburg or Barber or the road course at Indy, man, they're still, I think, a little wide-eyed to a certain extent because they're racing against the veterans. By the time we get to Road America at the end of June, it's kind of almost old hat, right? They're ready to attack, and they rolled out with a car that nobody could beat. They were 1-2, I think, every session.
An impressive duo there, and we hope to see Toby Sowery in more than just this race weekend, as he has given that, again, it's a BN Racing, Pelfrey Racing, Team Pelfrey effort this weekend here at St. Petersburg. Just a one-race weekend deal for now, but as Bryn Newtall talked about, hopeful to see him at some more races, but certainly it's going to depend on funding and sponsorship.
Well, and let's look at that. Maybe it's not Toby. Maybe it's somebody else. But
yeah.
The simple fact that BN Racing has got this connection with Team Pelfrey, there's another car available. Will they lease that car? Will it come right into the BN camp? There is a 4th car at Andretti, and we've heard names bandied around to potentially have a 4th car at Coda. And there's some interesting names being brought around, some stuff that's off the record right now that we can't bring up. Belardi Auto Racing has a 4th car. We're expecting to see a 4th car at the Freedom 100. The car's there. If the interest comes in, there's cars. These teams can field more machines.
Yeah.
Yukos Racing could do the same thing.
6.5 minutes to go in this first practice session for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires here on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. Oliver Askew has just gone to P1 at a minute 6.589. That bumps Zachary Clayman to second. Ryan Norman is third. Robert McGinnis is fourth. So the Andretti Autosport teammates run first, third, and fourth. Julian Falchero is fifth. David Maluka is sixth. Toby Sowery is seventh. Rinus VeeKay is 8th, Lucas Cole 9th, Dalton Kellett 10th. I think VeeKay is about the one guy we haven't really talked about, Rob, and that's really not fair on our part because he is an impressive rookie driver for Juncos Racing and took that scholarship prize from winning the Indy Pro 2000 Series up into Indy Lights. Maybe a disappointing first session for Rinus VeeKay, but you watched him all season. This young man is just a lot of talent in the cockpit of that car.
To be honest, I would probably rate him as the most exciting driver, or the driver with maybe the most potential to move to the IndyCar program over the next couple of years. He's from Holland. He's got the Dutch backing, and they are working hard to make sure that he continues to work forward. He has been the model of consistency over the last 2 years. He's the driver that was in the battle with Oliver Askew in USF2000 in 2017. They went at it hammer and tong, back and forth, winning races. But in that season, VeeKay did not finish outside the top 5, even one time. That was a consistency. He moves, of course, up with Juncos Racing into Indy Pro 2000 last year. Great battle with first, really, Parker Thompson for Exclusive Autosport. Then you throw in Oliver Askew as well. But Rinus was, again, consistent. No mistakes, wins the championship. He, in the offseason, went and ran the Asian F3 program, won that championship over there. They don't like foreigners coming in to win the Asian F3. They were going after him like crazy, but he won that championship as well. And he's done some offseason racing between both years. He'll come in here with so much momentum right now. He's not going to be happy at all with 8th. They're 1.7 seconds back right now. They're not going to be pleased at all with that. They're going to want to find more pace. But Rinus VeeKay is a driver that everybody who's watching Indy Lights needs to get themselves up to speed on because he's a future star for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned it. He's got a distinction that most drivers can't say, that he's already got a championship in the year of 2019 with that dominating performance in the Asian F3 Series. And, you know, he said during the offseason or when he signed with Juncos Racing that Juncos is home for him. And that, when I heard him say that, very familiar to the kind of talk that we heard from Spencer Pigot and from Kyle Kaiser. And lo and behold, those two drivers took that, the good feeling of being at home, the comfortable nature of driving for Ricardo Juncos, and they turned it into a championship and ultimately an opportunity to go to IndyCar. For that very reason, I think Rinus VeeKay is a guy to watch for.
And remember, he's so young. We can't put the pressure on him like you got to win this championship and be in IndyCar next year. He could do 3 years easily because he's that young. I think he's only 17 years of age, right? So he has an opportunity to hang out where he is right now, and then at 20 years of age, maybe make the transition. I know that everybody's pushing, and you want to get to IndyCar as soon as you possibly can, but Rinus VeeKay could really sit here and really develop his skill set before making the jump.
We just saw Rinus VeeKay kick the rear end of that car sideways, exiting a corner here at St. Petersburg with Lucas Cole following him around this racetrack. It is still it is now Ryan Norman who's gone P1. That's a change at the top at a minute 6.42. His teammate Oliver Askew just 3/100ths of a second off of that quick lap at a minute 6.45. Then it's Zachary Clayman. David Malukas has found a little more speed as he has jumped into the top 5. He is 4th quick at a minute 6.8. Robert McGinnis has been bumped to 5th. Then you've got Julian Falchero in 6th. Toby Sowery in 7th. Rinus VeeKay 8th. Dalton Kellett is 9th. And Lucas Cole rounds out the 10 drivers here in St. Petersburg this weekend. Programming note, of course, with IndyCar Radio, we're back to kick off the season. That means live coverage all season long for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires, as well as the NTT IndyCar Series. And those cars will be on track for the first time at 10:45 Eastern Time a little bit later today. Mark Janes and Dave First will be in the booth. We'll hear from Anders Krohn a little bit later this weekend. Joel Sebastianelli joins us once again in St. Petersburg. Good to have him working with us this weekend, and Jake Query will have coverage of that practice session. And lots of options, Rob, this year of how you can listen to IndyCar Radio. You've got the TuneIn app. You've got IndyCarRadio.com. You've got the live timing and scoring page on IndyCar.com. You've got the IndyCar app for qualifying and races for both the Indy Lights Series and IndyCar. You've got SiriusXM, and then, of course, for all the IndyCar Series, a select bunch of terrestrial radio stations. So lots and lots of outlets. If you're at the racetrack, pick up a set of racing electronic headphones. You can listen to the frequency as well. So folks want to find us, they're going to find us. And the cool part, it's all free of charge here for Indy Lights and IndyCar action on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Yeah, always a great opportunity to get us. You know, we're on pit lane. We're trying to tell the stories. You guys are out in the track calling everything you see as well. We're trying to paint the picture. And again, as you say, all free, and just so many opportunities, especially on your phone, like you said, through the IndyCar app as well. Just a lot of opportunities to be able to access the free IndyCar radio feed.
It is amazing, these little devices we carry in our pockets. I mean, you can have IndyCar radio with you literally anywhere you go, and we're happy that you chose to join us this season and all season long, as we're really excited for this season, as we are under 60 seconds now in this first and only practice session. Boy, we just saw Toby Sowery hanging out in that bright Pelfrey yellow car. These drivers, I would assume, in these last 45 seconds, Rob, looking for the final bit of speed as everyone's chasing Ryan Norman.
Well, during this session, right, they've been coming in. They've been making minor changes. They've been talking to the engineers. Let's just see if we can't get that baseline that we need when we get to qualify later on today. What I like is we've got some good different battles between the teams. You've got Andretti looking good. They're 1, 2, 3 right now. Then you've got Zachary Clayman for Bilardi Auto Racing. They're in the 4 spot. Throw Malukas in the hunt. But you've also got, which I really, really like, Nick, you got the inter-team battles as well. You got Askew and Norman and McGuinness battling it out with each other. You know, Malukas and Sowery going to go head-to-head. Zachary Clayman's, hey, Julian Falchero's now joining my team. Oh, now I got to battle him too. So even though it's team versus team, it's also that inter-team battle because you want to be the #1 guy under your own tent. At
the top, though, it's the Andretti Autosport drivers just throwing haymakers at each other as Oliver Askew went to P1 at a minute 6.184. And then in the final seconds, the veteran Ryan Norman, now in his 3rd year in Indy Lights, one of the championship contenders, we certainly assume. He's the first and only driver so far in this practice session to go sub-minute 6 at a minute 5.966. An impressive practice session for the driver from Aurora, Ohio, about 40 minutes southeast of Cleveland in his 3rd year. Again, we talked about it, Rob. He is going to be one to watch. You saw him put it all together at Gateway Motorsports Park last year in just a thrilling race win over Colton Herta. What a start to this practice session for Ryan Norman.
I was waiting for Oliver Askew to come across the line, the timing line, to see if he was going to jump to the top. But in a sport where confidence and momentum is just so crucial, how good is it for Ryan Norman to come in here now and take control of his team? He was kind of that 3rd driver last year, right, behind Pato O'Ward and Colton Herta. But for him to come in here now, go over a 10th quicker than Oliver Askew, I'm leading this team, guys. You know, you guys can battle it out with me right now, but I'm going to hold my momentum from last year. I'm P1 to start the season. This is going to be really good for the mindset of Ryan Norman.
And it's like anything, any other sport or even in your everyday job. When you've been there for 3 years, you're always going to come in, you know, on a first day of work or a first day on the job a little bit more confident than someone who is brand new. He knows this racetrack, obviously competing here for the last couple years. And a lot of these other drivers do because there's so many Road to Indy products, but every car drives a little bit different. These cars certainly have a lot more horsepower than what we see in USF2000 and in Indy Pro 2000. So what a start to the season for Ryan Norman. Again, fast lap at a minute 5.966, Rob, as all these drivers have seen the checkered flag and have brought those machines to pit lane.
Before you give them the fast 6, one thing to point out, we went green to checker.
Perfect.
Which is exactly how we need to start this season.
Ryan Norman is P1 here in practice #1 for the Indy Light Series presented by Cooper Tires. Oliver Askew, the rookie driver from Jupiter, Florida, goes 2nd quick. Very impressive at a minute 6.105. Then it's Zachary Clayman, the veteran for Bilardi Auto Racing, who steps back from IndyCar into Indy Lights. A nice session for him at a minute 6.322 as he grabs 3rd. David Malukas comes home in 4th. Robert McGuinness 5th. Toby Sowery is 6th. Let's hear from the fastest driver, Ryan Norman, standing by with Ryan Marine.
Well, Ryan Norman, 3 years now. This is 3rd in Indy Lights. How much more comfortable are you here in year 3 than you were back in year 1 a couple years back?
It's definitely a night and day difference. Just learning the tracks, the car, really just comes down to experience of knowing what it's going to do and how to go around this place. So so far the car is really, really fast. Andretti Autosport's given me a great car so far, so we're going to push hard this week and see what we can do.
It is just practice, that's true, but nevertheless, to end up P1 at the end of a session in Indy Lights, that has to mean a great deal.
For sure. I mean, there's definitely some things we still need to work on, but definitely the car is fast, so that's a good sign. So just some small tweaks and we'll be pretty good.
Great start to the weekend for Ryan Norman. Jake?
And a good start for the weekend for the Index Invest machine that is piloted by Oliver Askew. And let's talk about this. I think a lot of people see you as kind of the face of this road to Indy in the latter series, because you've come your way through. Here you are now